Okay, so today I thought that I would actually put my channel to use and make a video. Um, so this isn't really going to be scripted or anything like that. It's more of just a ramble, because I've just watched Why Give Me Linux, which is not even as good as Windows by Linux Help Guy. And honestly, it's the same kind of video that I've been seeing quite a lot from a lot of the popular YouTubers, be it, Matthew Moore or, Linux Help Guy. Basically, they're saying that Linux is worse than Windows and, you know, things like that. And I just thought I would bring a different argument to the table that at least I haven't seen being discussed very prominently. So, I guess I should I should start this out by saying that hopefully you'll listen to this with an open mind and not just write me off as some Linux fanboy or anything like that just by the first few seconds of this video. But so I guess I'll explain my viewpoint. So Linux actually started out as an attempt to bring the Unix-like experience to the PC. So I'll leave a video in the description by a guy named Matt Samudio, and he talks a little bit about, well, I guess a lot, actually. There's several videos in his series that he did, but he talks about the Unix-like experience, and he compares it a bit to the Windows-like experience, or Windows experience, not Windows-like, excuse me, the Windows experience, and he said something that I completely agreed with, and he says that in the Unix-like system, the computer user is much more of a driver, and in the Windows system, the user is much more of a passenger. And I don't think that either approach is inherently good or bad, because in the Unix-like system, the idea is to keep everything minimal and simple, and use simple tools that are focused and do their job very well, and intermingle those tools with other tools to get certain tasks done. And really, the type of user that Linux or BSD or any other type of Unix-like system, Solaris, whatever, at least on the desktop, it attracts more computer literate users and people who are interested in tinkering with things with their computer and things like that. And really, I think that's where Linux will always be. In the desktop market, it's completely taken over in just about every other market, but in the desktop market at least, I think that Linux will always be a niche operating system, because most people don't really care what operating system they're using. It's just a wallpaper and some applications. So people use programs. They don't really use an operating system. They don't think about using an operating system, at least. And so, really, it's something that I've been noticing a lot lately, at least, is both Linux distributions and I guess quote-unquote Linux users on a Linux YouTubers and things like that. It's these people who go on YouTube and they say things, like they basically pull up a video of some random Linux distribution, talk about how it's not Windows, and look at all the things that it can't do as well as Windows can do, or it doesn't do things like Windows, so it's terrible. But anyway, that's another rant, I suppose. They're comparing Linux to Windows when it's really a completely different way of thinking about computing. And I realize that sounds a bit like a cop-out at first glance, but I don't really think it is. I think it is genuinely a different design philosophy. Now you could get into the free software people, and their philosophy is completely different from Unix-like philosophy. Really, that's another video all in itself. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of Linux distributions have been presenting themselves as giving you a very user-friendly Windows-like experience, and I don't think that that's the right way to go, because then Linux is just going to end up being Windows but worse, and that's all that it will ever be. And honestly, that's how these YouTubers are discussing it, and you can't really blame them because the way that the Linux distributions present themselves, because Linux is not Windows, and it was never really designed with that kind of use case in mind, at least in the origins of it, and in distributions like this one right here, Slackware, or Arch, or anything like that. They're not really designed to give you a Windows experience, but distributions like Mint and all the ludicrous number of Ubuntu based distributions who sell themselves as a user-friendly Linux distribution for new users and things like that. And I really don't see the point of that, because then really Linux is just Windows but worse if you look at it from that angle. Now don't get me wrong, this happens on both sides of the boat, or I guess it happens in both boats. That's the correct way to say it. It's the Unix-like people, or at least the stereotypical Linux users. They look at Windows and talk about how bad it is, and it's how it's completely different from Unix, therefore it's terrible. And it's just they're so radically different. It's very difficult to say something like that and honestly have it have any merit. So that's the point that I'm trying to make in this video, is Linux and Windows just have completely different design philosophies, and I really do think that all the user-friendly Linux distributions have it in the wrong. And there's nothing wrong with having a user-friendly operating system. Of course, being user-friendly is subjective, but I think that Linux trying to sell itself as Windows, just it won't hold up, because people are they're used to Windows and the applications they have on Windows, and we can create our own open source substitutes all we want to, but at the end of the day, to an end user's perspective, it's just Windows but worse if we try to sell it like that. So I guess that's why I think that Linux on the desktop is doomed. I guess it's not really doomed, but it's not gonna happen the way that people want it to happen, because it's just, if you keep trying to do it like that, Linux is just gonna be trying to play catch up with Windows and be try to get that Windows-like experience. And I don't know, I don't think that that's ever gonna happen, because I don't know, I can't see Linux beating Windows at its own game. So yeah, that's pretty much the point of this video. That's about it. And so hopefully you agreed with some of the points of this video. If you didn't, or if you did, please leave a comment, and I'd love to see some discussion in the comments, just because this is an argument that I don't see very often. So that's about it. So yeah, thanks for watching.